Okay, welcome to the Nova Hoopcast quarantine edition. Kevin and Brian with you in the off season here. This is our quarantine edition. We're doing a collaborative effort with our friends from the Inadvertent Whistle podcast, Adam Brick and Scott Bach-Hansen. Thanks for inviting us, guys. Kevin, any words for the guys there? I don't recognize them without their stripes on.
Yeah, no words, just glad to have them here today.
Yeah, it's good to be with you guys. I think, this is a first. I think some people have recommended that we get together and do something. And maybe there's more to that down the road, but it's good to see other human beings, for once. So.
Well, they're coaches. Let's not go as far as human beings.
This is true. Adam.
That didn't take long.
No.
So one of the reasons we're getting together today is recently the finalists for the next year's rule changes came out from the National Federation of High Schools, and I was able to get my hands on them. Luckily, I'm not sure if it was because I wrote one of them or it was just because I just got lucky. So I thought it would be maybe a good idea for the four of us to get together and kind of go through some of them. There's 28, so we're not going to go through 28, and we're not going to go through the headbands or other stuff. We're just going to really.
So if you're listening, hang with us because we're not going through 28.
Yes.
If you're not listening, join in because it could be interesting.
Well, they have more listeners than us. We only have 7. So
not after this one. They're not gonna. People are gonna leave like flies.
So I thought I'd just kind of maybe jump into it. And we can just kind of start talking about it. Is that okay with you guys?
Hey, Scott, before we jump in, can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned you were part of one of the rule changes. Can you tell us a little bit about that procedure and how that works?
Yeah, so any coach, official, or administrator, anybody affiliated with the Basketball National Federation high school level can go on the National Federation website and submit any rule change that they deem to be, of interest to them. A few years ago, some of the listeners and those that are watching may have remembered that Gil Mack and I put in a rule change to have the coaching box expanded from the 14 foot to the 28 feet. And so that was my first foray into changing into the rule changes. And then for the last few years, I've submitted one. We'll talk about it in a little bit, but it's anybody can do it. Now inside the room's a little bit different, and maybe it would be best to let Adam kind of give a 30,000-foot view. For many that don't know, Adam used to be the AD at Georgetown and served on the NCAA Rules Committee for a number of years. So maybe, I don't know, Adam, can you give him a view of what's inside the room where it happens?
I can only tell you what's inside the NCAA room, and it was probably one of the more fun experiences of my professional career. Just a quick story I'll tell is when I don't even remember the years I was on the committee, quite honestly, but I was on the committee with Mike Bray, who's as you all know, is the coach at Notre Dame. And it's when we put in the silly rule for the imaginary cylinder underneath the basket for the beginnings of the restricted arc. And we couldn't make a rule change that quickly because the NCAA needs a couple of years to let divisions 2 and 3 catch up with the finances to make changes to the court. So we came up with this imaginary cylinder underneath the basket. And we were in a hotel ballroom in Indianapolis, and we taped out a basketball court. We moved all the tables out of the way, and Mike Bray and Reggie Witherspoon was at Buffalo at the time, and a couple other coaches. They're running plays, and we're running through all these different scenarios. So what should be a restricted area play, what shouldn't be, and that was just pretty cool. Other than that, I don't remember about anything about my time on the committee. Other than Mike Bray is a great guy, and he pays for lots of lunches.
So Bray is a friend of Brian's.
Good dude.
He was my coach when I went to basketball camp when I was like 18 and he was 20 or something like that down at DeMatha and St. John's. I think he was playing at.
Was that the all metropolitan basketball camp?
Yeah. It was even before he went to GW. I think he was at Northwest Louisiana or something like that. Anyway, yeah, good guy.
Very good guy.
We went and visited him, not to get off track, but we went to visit him in Delaware one time, Brian and I. And he was a very cool host.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Had a lot of fun with him.
Well, and a little known fact is all you coaches can blame Mike Bray because he's actually the one that got me into officiating. I thought I was going to be thought I was going to be a college basketball player, and he told me, Scott, nobody's recruiting you. You should get into officiating or coaching. And,
I don't like him anymore.
I tried coaching, and I made it through 4 games, but I got kicked out of 2 of them, and that's why I'm an official now. So, anyway.
It all makes sense.
So, so what happens now is these finalists that we're getting ready to start showing will go inside a room and they'll vote on them, and they'll come up with their allotment. Last year there were 33 finalists, and I think they made 5 changes, and of the 5 changes, 3 or 4 of them were editorial or language changes, and one of them was rolling of the shorts. So, there you have it.
You think with the rule changes this year, with the lack of live sporting events, when they announce the rule changes, they'll make it a live event so we can watch something?
You know what? If not, we can always do it again. But no, that would be fun. I think there's a lot of people looking forward to the draft tonight. So,
by the way, I'm doing everything we can not to talk about rule changes, guys. So
yeah, I can see that.
And the rolling of the shorts, that was basically last year saying it didn't matter, right? That's what it was.
Correct. Yeah, they just
weren't going to talk to kids about it.
They waved the white flag.
Which is good. It just didn't seem to be worth people's time and be that big a deal. So I'm glad, we're not wasting people's time on stuff that doesn't matter, right?
I mean, how do you sit there and tell kids to roll their shorts up or tuck their shirts in when most of their coaches are wearing sweatsuits on the sidelines?
Fairfax, Coach Doyle.
I mean,
yes. Well, as you guys know, a lot of people are proponents of, the fewer rules, the better, whether it's in coaching or anything else. And the more rules there are, the more things you guys have to keep track of. I mean, it's hard enough to officiate a game, but when you're worrying so much about people rolling their shorts and things like that, it gets a little bit out of hand. It makes your jobs harder, I guess.
Yeah, it makes it harder, especially when you have somebody that's really looking at the spirit and intent of the rule versus being too legalistic. And,
right.
It just, that's part of the challenge with rules as well. So, well, why don't we get into it? Let me share my screen and I'm going to try and toggle back and forth for our listeners or watchers. I'm sorry, I'm not very technology savvy. So
see, ours is only audio, and Scott doesn't know they're actually called viewers, not watchers.
Yes.
That's the problem when you have the face for radio like he does and I do.
Right. So can you guys see my screen here?
Yeah.
The white. All right, great.
Yeah.
So on the left side, it's going to say number 1 and 2. That's how we're going to focus. We're not even going to look at number 1 because it's a rule that's not necessarily something that we need to really pay attention to. But rule 2 is probably the first one of a basketball situation that is one to consider. And this basically is saying that at the end of the game, in the fourth quarter or any extra period for the last minute of the game at 59.9 or less, they're going to stop the clock at every dead ball, including after a made basket.
Wow.
This mirrors the NCAA rule. So this is one of the ones that's made the finalist. And, from our side of the fence, I'm going to tell you that this is probably going to be very difficult because we already have challenges enough with our electronic clock operators and, whoever we can get to run the clocks. However, there is a chance that this could pass, but, right now I would say probably unlikely.
Hey, Scott, I think I told you on the phone once or twice the last couple of years, I've been at games where the clock operator, and I'm not sure, I don't think it was a paid clock operator, maybe just somebody in the community, did stop the clock like this.
Yeah.
Probably
I've been
because
to games.
they watch college basketball on TV, and so they just do it. So you sometimes run into that. That's a big issue in high school because some schools, I guess, pay for clock operators and some don't, and so you never know what you're going to get. So, I mean, just a thought there that it does get confusing depending upon who you have doing it.
I agree. I don't know what, from a coaching perspective, I'm not sure what you guys think about it. I'm not really sure this is a earth-shattering one that I would want to see from an officiating standpoint, but from a coaching standpoint, maybe it's better for you guys.
I think it's better for you. have an opportunity to maybe get your kids ready, or, you know, if you prepare them well enough, they know what to do when the ball is dead. And I think it is an advantage for some coaches. I agree, and we've talked about this a couple times about who's managing that clock. In our terms, we talked about more about the shot clock, you know, whether that should come in. But I agree. There's a lot of times where I've seen games and people think it's college and they stop that clock and people get crazy about it. So I wonder who's going to be running that clock and their ability to do so correctly.
I think the other thing you see, we all as coaches teach our guys, you know, if we have the lead late, like real late, and the other team scores, let the ball roll, you know, kill some time, or you might tell your guys, don't even throw it in. There's only 5 or 6 seconds left in the game. Just let it roll away. Don't throw it in. Time will run out. So obviously it would take that strategy out, which I think maybe in his rationale, he wrote something about that.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Let me go back to the page here, and we're not going to go through all the rationale, but yeah, additionally, stopping the clock would allow the officials to recognize requests from coaches for timeout at the exact time of the clock and decide when to start the throw-in count, similar to NFHS football. So anyway, I think that's one just to, you know, make everyone aware of. And while we're here on the screen, I'm just going to scroll down to the next one we'll talk about. We're going to skip headband rules. And so for those that are looking at, you know, the smooth headband, don't worry about that. We're not going to pay attention to that right now. So I will read this one. This one comes from a very handsome gentleman in Fairfax, Virginia. And this is the basket interference rule we were talking about earlier. This is when a player, for those that don't know, when a player goes and attempts to block a shot, if they smack the backboard, it gives the officials only one chance to call something, and the only thing they can call is a technical foul on the player. It's either that or nothing, at least the National Federation of High School. In the NBA and in the NCAA, they do have the ability to score this basket for basket interference. So it's written in a sense that says unintentionally slaps or strikes the backboard or causes the ring to vibrate while the try or tap is in flight or is touching the backboard or is on the cylinder or in the cylinder of the basket, that it would be basket interference. And so I kind of equate this to almost the Emmanuel Aguirre sense, because whenever he tried to block a shot, it would be very, very, demonstrative, powerful kid, could shake the basket, and a lot of people were upset that we weren't calling basket interference. And the reason why is because we couldn't. It wasn't in the rule book. So I don't know. I'll let you guys discuss this.
Actually, the only time I've ever called it was on him, but it was as he dunked the ball. It wasn't defensively. He dunked the ball and at the same time slapped the backboard. Totally unnecessary. The whole thing vibrated. It was, and I whacked him, and Coach Duggan was like, "Really?" I go, "Really? Never called it before.
I might have been
Never
there.
call it again."
I might have been at that game. Would you give him good style points for that dunk, though?
Oh, absolutely. I think the game might have been at like maybe was it at Madison or I don't remember where the game was at. It wasn't at South Lakes, I don't think.
Right.
Manuel was transferring, guys. I don't know if you know that. Kind of a quick aside, but he's leaving Shepherd.
Oh, really? Where's he headed? Do you know?
He's in the portal. I don't know where he's going yet. Like a lot of kids, I guess they're all waiting.
In the portal.
I'm thinking of entering the portal.
Yes. I wish you would.
I think this would be a great rule change. If somebody slaps the backboard and the basket and the ball doesn't go in and the ring vibrates, just bring it up, put the 2 points in the book and move on.
I agree. 100%.
Let me ask you this. So the way the rule is now, by the letter of the law, anytime somebody slaps the backboard at all, you're supposed to give them a technical foul.
No. It has
only,
to be
only if it causes.
No. It's if we don't deem it to be a legitimate attempt at blocking a shot. So,
right.
Example, drive on the right side of the basket, slap the backboard on the left side of the basket. Clearly, no intent to block the shot. Anything other than that,
right?
You're pretty much going to deem as an attempt to block the shot.
Or if the ball's already on the ring and it's rolling around the ring and then somebody smacks it to try to dislodge it. They're going to call themselves. And by the way, that part of it still would stay in the rule. So the obvious attempt to not block a shot and have something happen with the ball, that's still staying in there. But what it does is it now gives the officials an opportunity to have a little bit more flexibility with calling out. I'll share a quick story that Adam and I had to get involved in a couple of years ago. There was a Loudoun County school where a player received their first technical foul for reaching across the plane and touching the ball. And they received their second technical foul for trying to block a shot and smacking the backboard. They were ejected, and as a result, they were supposed to miss senior night. And Adam and I and Mike Preston, our rules interpreter, wrote in and requested that it be reconsidered because the rule was misapplied. Because it was just an attempt at a block shot, and we hated to see this kid who was going through some difficult times, and basketball was really the only thing he had going for him, miss out on senior night, and we were able to be successful at that. VHSL agreed with us.
You're going to start to let them think that officials have hearts. Don't let them think that.
This is true. I'm sorry. Let me get out of this real quick. Any last thoughts on this one? Anybody? Okay.
No, I really commend whoever submitted that one, though.
Very
I wonder,
handsome.
I mean, it's written pretty well grammatically, so I wonder who wrote that actually.
Thank you.
Probably somebody with a law degree.
I don't know if it's somebody with a law degree. It's certainly somebody with a brain, though.
So this is one of the ones that's written twice. We're on number 5 here. You guys can still see my screen, I hope. And what this is saying is that at the end of each quarter, they're going to reset the foul count. So at the end of the quarter, it will go to 0. So at the end of the first quarter, the team fouls go to 0 on each side. But they'll shoot bonus free throws on the 6th team foul. And then there's another one that's written exactly the same way, but they want to shoot it on the 5th team foul. So there's 2 different options here. So if you have 5 team fouls in the first quarter, depending on which option it is, you'll either shoot 1-on-1 or the next one will be 1-on-1 or double bonus. They're not shooting 1-on-1. These are only double bonus. And then at the beginning of the next quarter, they'll reset. So, and that's what both of these are. And again, one is the 6th team foul and one is the 5th team foul of each quarter. And then team fouls will reset to 0. Each team will shoot double bonus or 2 shots when they reach that bonus level. So that is the next one. Thoughts?
Oh,
So,
no. I don't think it's
okay,
that
so
big a
number
deal.
1, yeah, only double bonus and reset at each quarter.
And the reason that they want to take out the regular bonus is they think it's confusing and it creates correctable error situations for officials. That's their rationale.
First of all,
is it
it's not confusing.
I don't think
No,
it's-
it is not confusing.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't see the point. It's like minutia. I don't see why you need to put a rule in about that.
The one thing
Is
I
it
like
just-
about it is from an officiating standpoint is you're not shooting, bonus and double bonus the entire second quarter for teams that are very handsy, which
Yeah.
slows down the game.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say it might speed up the game a little bit.
I guess it depends
I think someone has a lot of time on their hands.
from a philosophical standpoint, as a coach, it goes back, at least for me, the question, I don't have an answer for it, is if 1-on-1 is a part of the game where making free throws is an important strategy of the game, or missing free throws, then do you want to go at any point in time straight to double bonus without a 1-on-1? Is that a part of the game that should stay? And I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Kevin?
I don't know. I'm a slow processor, as they told me in school, so I have to give some time to think about that. But I just don't see it being that big a deal. I don't know. I'm sure if I had Mark Ray Mendez on here, he could consult and advise me about all the scenarios. But I don't have an immediate thought on it. I don't know, Brian, do you?
Yeah, I'm not sure that part of the game is like broken. I guess the one thing that maybe could be addressed, and this might have been written about in one of the other ones, is, fouling at the end of the game. I mean, we've been talking about that probably for years in the game, and I'm sure that probably came up in Adam's meetings on the college level too, that maybe there's things that can be done to address, fouling at the end of games. I think it goes way back to Jim Valvano and NC State back in the day. But I don't know that this is necessarily, like, when I look at these rule changes, I look like, what are we fixing? And I don't know that there's anything that needs fixing here.
I'd be more in favor of this if it was 1-1 as opposed to double bonus. I like the idea of the resetting because it speeds up the game when we're not shooting forever in the second and fourth quarters. Most of the people aren't there to watch people shoot free throws.
Right.
It's a part of the game. I'd like to keep it at 1-1 as opposed to 2 shots, but anyway,
we just call less fouls.
It's true.
Yeah. Yes. I can think of, like, I feel like maybe there's 1 or 2 games a year where you feel like all we did was watch teams shoot free throws, but I don't feel like it happens that often.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next one here.
It just better not be number 6 or number 7, because that means we're going one at a time, and that's awful slow.
Only 21 more to go.
Well, this one's kind of important, though. This now says a disqualified player is one who is barred from further participation in the game because of having committed his or her 5th personal foul, personal or technical, or any combination of 2 technicals and or intentional fouls or a flagrant per game. So if you have a play where you have a player getting a technical foul for reaching across the plane in the first quarter, and then there's an intentional foul later in the game, that player would be disqualified.
Awful. Next.
Yeah.
I agree.
In favor. I mean, you guys have officials have the power to eject somebody, right? Whether you give them 2 technicals or 1 technical, right? Can you eject somebody?
Yes, just put the word flagrant, whatever we call, and you can see it.
Yeah. So you have that authority. So I'm not in favor of this.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
To the officials, how many guys have you ejected over your career?
Players
and or coaches? If you can't remember, I think there's a problem.
Not including Kevin.
I mean, you're not talking about a disqualified player who's gotten 5 fouls, and you're not
Correct.
talking about anybody.
I'm not talking about
right. I've ejected 2 fans in my career, but I don't think I've ever ejected a player. No, and 1 player. 1 player, the Oakton Hayfield regional final at the Patriot Center. The kid that was going to William & Mary on a football scholarship got tossed for hawking a loogie.
Second shot?
So, pardon?
Was that the last shot where Oakton won on last second shot?
I don't remember the outcome of the game, but I remember the individual. I don't even remember the kid's name, but I remember he got on a defensive play. He had broken his elbow or something during the football season. He fell on it during this game. He was down in the paint while they tended to him, and the kids from the Hayfield side yelled, it was all quiet. Hey, ref, 3 seconds, which was sort of funny. And this kid popped up like he was shot out of a cannon and was trying to get to the other end to fight whoever said it. And they're holding him back, and the kid spits, and you can see the loogie going through the air on the tape.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we ejected him for that. But other than that, I don't think I've ever ejected a player or a coach.
Scott?
I ejected a coach when I was in Board 12 from Carroll High School once. Same game I ejected the scorekeeper.
Nice.
And
that's because he was stopping the clock in the last minute of the game.
Right.
That's right. And I had a game at West Virginia Wesleyan playing Davis Nelkins, Tim Comer, who's now a ACC official, myself, and 1 other gentleman. We had a brawl, and we ended up ejecting, I think, 14 players. Not pretty, but other than that, I think generally just having good communication skills has helped.
Brian, you've been ejected, Brian?
Negative.
1 time.
Who got you?
I can't remember his name. I know a lot of the guys
Was it deserved?
around, but it was at home versus Falls Church, and came on the court, kind of deserved that. He gave me the first one, and then I wouldn't let it go, and then he said I cursed, and that was an alleged curse. I don't
Can't have that.
What's that?
We can't have that.
Well, the best thing about it was
Cursing?
well, we won, which made me feel good. But the next game I had to sit out was at Westfield, and they were awesome that game. I was like, hey, good luck, coaches.
Nice.
Every now and then that Sterling Park anger comes out, that chip on the shoulder.
Boulevard, we used to call it, man.
I tell you, what really helped me was I had a really good mentor who's an NBA referee. You guys know him, Scott Foster. And when I was a JV official, I used to give out technical fouls like Halloween candy. You get one, you get one. It was like Oprah giving out cars. And he heard about it and told me that I needed to go sign up for men's A-League basketball, do a 3-game set. And he told me for every technical foul you call, you give me $20. And it really taught me how to communicate with people, even when they were mad at you. And before the night was over, I did call a technical foul on Brian Maggot, who ended up playing at Maryland and GW. And when I walked in the bar, I took $20 out of my hand and gave it to Scott, and I said it was worth it. So, but anyway, so let's go down to the next one here. It looks like we got past that one.
The next one's not number 8, right?
I'm not even looking at it, so yeah, no. Number 9, nope. That's just a clarification. This is about forfeiture of a game. Don't need that. All right, number 13 is kind of a big one. They're trying to take away the coach's ability to call a timeout unless there's a dead ball.
Terrible idea.
Trying to mirror the college rule.
Well, we're coaches, so I think I can speak for Kevin that we're against that.
Oh, yes.
And they coach 15 to 18-year-olds who aren't 18 to 22-year-olds. Yeah, no way. Terrible.
Now,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, let me ask you guys as officials what you think. One of my pet peeves is every coach that immediately yells for a timeout during a scramble for a loose ball on the floor. And it could be like, I see coaches do it like 30 seconds into the game, and I've always wanted to try to save my timeouts. But I think that's a tough call for officials to make, is when guys are fighting for the ball on the floor and both coaches are standing up yelling timeout, timeout, timeout.
Well, it's great. Then that's when you just call a timeout and you give it to both teams, and we've just saved the timeout in the game. It's perfect.
Right.
I look at it as, if I hear it, I'm not taking my eyes off the court, but if I hear it, I'll point to the bench. I think I may have even stolen this from Adam. Whereas, okay, I'm acknowledging that he's calling timeout, but I'm not yet calling it because this kid doesn't have possession yet. But as soon as he has possession, I'm going to hit my whistle and give him the timeout. You know, and there's some coaches and you know, that tell their kids, don't ever call a timeout. Those are my timeouts. And so, you know, I think that those are those kids are a little bit more well-trained not to ask for a timeout, so they're going to listen for the coach. I can't imagine if this rule went into place for those coaches that don't let their kids call timeouts, how they're going to be able to manage that. But
Coach Dobson would have to retire.
it's true. So I am in agreement with you guys, though, and I think one of the things in the rationale, I understand what they're saying, that in the heat of a moment, there's a fracas or there's a drive to the basket down the stretch, and some coach yells timeout, or in some cases whispers timeout, and then they say, hey, I called timeout. And it's more of a gotcha at that point, but that's so few and far between. And to Adam's point, 15 to 18-year-olds versus 18 to 22-year-olds is a big difference. But that is one of the finalists, so hopefully we don't see that one coming through. This is just a small one. If the ball lodges on the basket, if somebody takes a shot, and you know how it gets stuck between the rim and the backboard?
My shots have never done that. My shots always go in.
That's right. instead of it being a held ball, whoever's the one that caused it to get lodged, whether it's a pass or a shot, it won't be a held ball. That team loses the ball, goes to the defensive team.
I invoke the Brian Doyle rule on that. It ain't a problem. Leave it alone.
Yeah, it was interesting when I read that. Like, I had never thought about that's something that needs to be changed. It's interesting, though, but I don't think it matters.
Okay. Let's keep going down to the next one here.
I just want to know, did anybody put in the one where you have to indicate in the scorebook which players have contact lenses in? That's the important thing. Call that the Pat Halley rule.
All right, here for number 17, the free throw shooter, if they violate on the second shot, that team B will be able to have the right to run the end line as if it was a made free throw.
But it wasn't a made free throw.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna.
Next.
Yeah. I don't
This
think
is
there's any discussion.
18. I'll call this the Ed Troha play. May he rest in peace. A player should not purposely or deceitfully delay returning to the court after legally being out of bounds. They're changing this from a technical foul to just a violation similar to swinging of the elbows.
What is that? Please explain.
Please don't. Please don't. I mean,
I don't get it.
nobody.
The guy goes out of bounds and takes his time coming back in?
Right. And right now there are officials, there are a few that will, because it's in the book, that will call that a technical foul. It should just be removed from the book.
Yep.
Not made a dead a violation. But yeah, no. Next.
We had an official call it twice in one game last year.
See, that kind of stuff, and I think we've talked about on the podcast before, like knowing the difference between what the game is and what it's not. And I'm going to pick on a football official, not a basketball official, but we had at Riverside, we had like a youth night for halftime. And technically you're supposed to let the head assigner or the head official know if you're going to extend halftime longer than the normal time. Well, knowing Matt Oblas, he had emailed and contacted the head officials, but the white hat at that game didn't know. So he said it's a penalty. You're going to start off with a penalty beginning the second half. And I don't lose my temper a whole lot, but I got upset. I just this is about young kids. It speaks to your point of like that rule where officials do things just because they're in the book and they don't necessarily understand what's good for the game and what's not. And I always enjoyed coaches or officials who understood that, what's important and what's not. I think, Adam, you were doing a game with Riverside this past winter where we had a situation where I don't think we had the kids in the book because our bookkeeper was like in the bathroom or something,
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, we might get a technical, because, the old rule of having to have everything in. I guess my point is very simply, what's really important and who's calling every single rule and who just understands that that's just not part of what's good for the game.
Well, at that game, we invoked the bathroom rule. If the timer has a intestinal fortitude issue within minutes of the game, we're going to adjust.
Yeah.
Bookkeeper does. So we're going to adjust.
But I think that's really like a fundamental thing that coaches have problems with officials when they invoke rules that really are not. They are a rule. I get it. It's in the book, but it's not something that is reasonable. And that used to drive me nuts. You're going to share a rule. It's like HOA, like in my
right.
Come on.
I'll share a quick story. Years ago, doing a Hanley Millbrook doubleheader. Big rivalry out that way, and it was doing the girls' game first, and then the boys' game. And in the girls' game, the Hanley manager packed the wrong uniforms, so they had to go back and get the away uniforms. They put the home uniforms in. And of course, as you guys know, sometimes in high school, the numbers aren't the same between a kid's home and away jersey. It happens, right? They don't have. And so the Millbrook coach, who was a really good coach, really nice lady, she wanted to know if we were going to start the game with a technical foul because they didn't have the numbers in the book. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so we're going to throw salt in the wound on the poor student manager who packed the wrong. And I said, Coach, what's the intent of the rule? The intent of the rule is that you know who's starting, right? She goes, absolutely. I said, that's your biggest rival, right? She goes, yeah. I said, how many times have you seen them play? She goes, oh, many times. I said, well, then you know who's going to start. So we're not starting the game with a technical foul. I mean, that's the intent of the rule. I mean, so, yeah, I'm with you.
Intent. I guess that you said it right. What's the intent of the rule and how is it being used?
Yeah, I have two comments. First is, Kevin, that was the night you called me irate that Adam was at your school doing a game after you had scratched him. That's the rest of the story there. But I think
hey, that was nothing compared to what Kaz was saying.
Right. It's like the common sense. I think what we're all saying is like the spirit of the rule as opposed to the letter of the rule. And we run into that, Kevin. I know you run into that in school all the time. I did as an administrator. There's a million rules in the school system, and if you followed everyone to the letter, it would be ridiculous. And I think it's the same thing in everything. It's the same thing in officials and in officiating. I'm sure you guys talk about that all the time in your meetings. I mean, you could know the rule book frontwards and backwards, but you've got to have some common sense.
Well, I normally don't like to compliment Adam, but he is the king of common sense. I mean, he's, everybody wants to have the same type of ability to communicate with coaches that he has, but sometimes it's kind of like being around somebody that has a really good golf swing and all of a sudden they have the right tempo and all of a sudden you start having the right tempo. And the more I hang around Adam, the more I've learned about some things. And it helped me a few years ago. I was doing the Middleburg versus Westfield Christmas holiday final. And it was a great game. And during the game, there was blood on the uniform of one of the Westfield players. And one of our other officials who was over by the table, who wasn't really strong with rules, told the Westfield coach, Doug, yeah, just have him change his shirt behind the bench, which he's not allowed to. You're supposed to leave the visual confines of the court. And by the time he called me over, by the time I got there, the kid had already taken his shirt off and he was changing it. And I said, Jeff, that's a technical foul. And he said, oh, well, I told him to go behind the bench. And it's just taking that common sense and going, well, I can't give him a technical foul if you told him that. And so, we had officials in the stands, and some that are more rule centric than others, want to know why I wouldn't assess the technical foul. And it's because, well, we told them to. It was our mistake. And so we shouldn't have them penalized for it. Now, what I did do is I made Doug agree not to put the kid back in play. He was just trying to get him back in the game right away. And I told him, I said, how about if we make a deal here? We won't give you a technical foul and you just have him sit out for a tick of the clock and you can bring him back in. And that's what ended up happening. So sometimes common sense needs to prevail. And I think, it's not always going to do it, but I hope that our common sense and the coach's common sense meet, and hopefully that will be more prevalent. So let me get on to the next rule change here.
Number 28.
Number 19.
Good
This
try,
is one
Brian.
that people have an interest in.
Oh, geez.
It's like watching the NCAA brackets and all of a sudden the team shows up on the screen. The shot clock.
Oh yeah.
And it's the way it's written, it's in two different capacities here. So one is to have it at 35 seconds. And then the other one gives it to either 30, 35, or 40. And I think the second one's
decide at the beginning of the game.
The
I'd be
second
all for
one
that.
is written in a way that's more appropriate because it's by state association adoption. And then they can make the decision of whether to do 30, 35, or 40 seconds. So I know this has been a big topic. Before I turn it over to the coaches, I will share that I think that one of the challenges that I've heard from in different places in the VHSL is that some areas can't afford to have not just the shot clock, but the operator because of the rural areas. I think the cost of a shot clock is a bake sale or two to cover that. But when you get into the fact of you're going to have to pay somebody 30, 40, 50 bucks to run the shot clock, that is pretty good, and you're going to do it for freshman, JV, and varsity. That's an impact that around the state is a concern. So, but I'll turn over to you guys. I'm personally for it. I think it's great for basketball. It helps us. We referee a couple of schools like Flint Hill and St. Stephen St. Agnes that does have the shot clock, Potomac School. So we love it. But I also understand the other side of it. So I don't know. Brian, Kevin, what do you guys think?
Well, number one, I'm tired of talking about it. I feel like we talk about it almost every week on our podcast. And it's coming, it's a matter of time. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt we'll have one eventually. The only thing I'll say is, and I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other at this point, but the idea that it will improve the game so much, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Again, we talk about on our YouTube thing, we've talked a lot about like end of game situations. You see a lot of bad offense with shot clock too. So there would be a learning curve, but again, I'm kind of tired of talking about it. I think it's coming. It's just a matter of when it happens. Kevin.
I agree. I always look at it from the administrative side of it. Who's paying for those shot clocks and who's operating it. You guys have done college, so that even at the college level, that's messed up. They make mistakes. And at our school, we don't pay for ECO. So, you're going to have a dad or a JV manager or somebody doing that clock. And like Brian said, it's coming and all those kinks will be worked out. But I've never played in a league, coached in a league that has a shot clock. You guys mentioned that you've seen it work well. I'd be curious to see your perspective on why you think it works. I don't really care either, but I don't know how it's helping the game. The arguments of, kids are playing at the college level and they need to have a shot clock to prepare. I don't buy that. I think the overwhelming large majority of kids don't play at that level, especially in the public school games. So I don't buy that. But why do you guys think it's a good idea?
Well, all right. So I didn't want to say much, but I would also say, Kevin, so the kids from our area that do go on and play in college, it's not like they have this terrible experience in college because they didn't have a shot clock in high school. I don't think it has any impact on them at all. And I would also say, like right up here in our little neck of the woods, I rarely see teams hold the ball. Do I see teams play, more deliberate style? Sure. But I know there are other parts of I can't even remember where I was this year, if it was watching AAU or watching some high school games from out of the area. I think it does happen in other areas more often, but I don't see the old days of where, a team might win the tip and then just go up and hold the ball at half court. I haven't seen that in this area.
No, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
Brian, I've coached a long time and I only held the ball once. One time I held the ball.
Is that when you got that technical foul and got thrown out of the game?
Yeah.
No, we were playing Dunbar over in Maryland at Christmas, and they had won the city championship the year before, and I was happy to be in the game. And they held the ball on me, and I was like, good, hold the ball on me because you're 20 points better than me, and you're only up 4. It gives me a chance, but I think people highlight that 1 in 100 time they see someone hold the ball and go crazy. I don't think it's a big part of the game.
Let's just go back to the old lack of action.
Lack of action.
Let's go back to lack of action.
Right. I remember those days.
I think so. There's a couple of reasons why I like it. It helps us with clock situations, and I like the way that's managed. I also think if I was going to say that there's an area that we struggle in or don't do a very good job in, it's closely guarded counts while dribbling. Just as high school officials, maybe not just our association, just high school officials in general. So you remove that with the shot clock. And those are two things that I think are really beneficial to it. So that's why I personally like it. I think it just also it structures the ability to have the games in a more even flow. It would probably take away from those that want to play at a much faster pace, or at a much slower pace, and more on the girls' side. I know you guys more focus on the boys' side with your podcast, but on the girls' side, there's teams that are a little bit more methodical. I think there's no secret that girls' teams are a little bit more fundamentally sound, and so they don't mind passing the ball, like at Marshall. Mike Trevisano and his group does a really good job doing backdoors, and it's that Princeton offense, and they're very, very good at it. And I think that there's opportunities, for a little bit more structure on both sides of the fence. Adam, you got anything else you want to add, or should I just move on?
Next.
All right.
Are you awake, Adam?
Yep. This is riveting information, though.
Hey guys, I got 25 minutes till Jerry Lynn walks through the door, so I'm just giving you a heads up. I got 25 minutes left.
All right.
Does that mean you're
that would
changing
be pretty-
the locks?
We'll be done in 10.
Is the locksmith there?
There could be some entertaining TV.
All right, so this one here is actually written by the rules interpreter for the state of Virginia, Joyce Sisson, and this is about pregame dunking. And basically, I'm just going to paraphrase that she says that it would be okay to dunk during pregames. However, still not have the ability to hang on the rim like during a game. So you wouldn't want to have a player doing chin-ups during the game, or else that would be the technical foul. However, going up and dunking the ball, the way the basket has changed, the new flex rims are an area. So that is her rule change, and I'm really interested to hear it from your administrative mind, Kevin, what your thoughts are on this.
Let them dunk. Let the boys dunk. I mean, we have, maybe a couple kids on each team that can dunk. I don't think it's a big deal. I was reading her rationale a little bit, and I agree with her. ADs condone it, coaches condone it. It's just like, why not let it happen? I think the rims can handle it. They handle it all year. So I'd say let them do it.
Are you concerned at all about any kids maybe getting injured during pregame warms that are, trying to dunk and they ended up getting caught and landing awkwardly? Or is that it's at past that stage?
That's just Darwinian evolution there.
Funny story. You guys, most people know Bobby Laton, who's the varsity assistant at Madison. He and I played together in high school, and he's not real big. He's like 6 feet, but he's a good athlete. Played football and basketball in high school. And we had a game in warm-ups. He went up to dunk the ball, and he cut his hand on the rim in warm-ups and had to leave and go get stitches and miss the whole game. So I still remind him of that to this day. And you guys feel free to at appropriate times. But
Love it.
But
Yes.
I say the same thing. Let them dunk. Coach. I think coaches would have to. If you're a good coach, you'll think it through and decide. Are you going to let your kids dunk the entire time? Or are you going to let them dunk for 10 minutes and then whatever? But I can say as a player, probably my highlights in my playing career came dunking during warmups much more than they did during actual game time.
And at summer camp when you were 18.
That's right. Mike Bray coaching me up.
All right, so I think we're all on board with that. Let me scroll down here and see. I think we had one or two more.
Getting close.
This is just about an adult being ejected. They have to leave. If nobody else is on the bench, the game's forfeited. All right, this one is one that got a lot of legs last year, and thankfully it didn't pass. I'm not a big fan of it. But because there's been so many issues with uniforms and not having the right headbands and arm sleeves and colors, and now the head coach must be responsible for it. Otherwise, they will receive a technical foul for allowing a player to play with illegal apparel. And the only reason I bring this up, not because I agree with it, but because from what I understand, this was very hotly voted on last year and it got to a point where they thought it might get pushed through. So it wouldn't surprise me if this did get pushed through, that a technical foul on the head coach directly would finally solve the mystery that we're out there with our uniform issues with sleeves and everything else. So, Adam, why don't you lead this one off? I know you're excited about this one.
God awful terrible. The bottom line is, if there should be no uniform rules in the rules. If we can tell the difference between the two teams and nobody's wearing something that anybody else can get hurt, I don't care as an official whether kids' uniforms are tucked in or not, or their headbands match or their socks match. That's the coach's job. You want your team to look like a bunch of Joe bags of donuts, that's up to you. You want them to look good, that's fine. I mean, again, start on the benches, get out of the sweatsuits, but no, what a terrible rule. They shouldn't even allow that to be considered.
I do laugh when I don't know what it says in your referee book about what you're supposed to say to coaches when you walk over to say hello, before the
Not allowed to repeat that on this air, I don't think.
But that's a close regarded secret. But there are officials, it must be in your book, ask if your team is properly equipped. I used to always laugh when they asked me about it. It's like, yeah, it looks like they're all wearing shorts and shirts. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. When I coach my kids' baseball team, the umpires say, are your players, wearing the proper equipment? I don't know. What about wedding rings? Are those okay? Come on. Just play the damn games.
Yeah. So, but I will caution, the R7 listeners and the many coaches that watch the podcast for Nova Hoopcast, that I would not be surprised if that passed.
So the better question from all of this is if coaches in particular, if you're adamantly opposed to some of this stuff, how do you voice your displeasure with these rules? Is there a mechanism for you guys to do that?
Coaches?
Yeah.
No, I guess, it'd go back to beginning where I asked Scott how these rules get, passed. I guess we should be a part of that process. I don't know if there's any other way. Just sort of I think you take what you've been given and complain about it. So I think you got to be a part of the beginning of the whole rule, and
Sounds like your DSA is not doing it. Sounds like your DSA is not doing his job, is what I'm thinking.
Worthless. It's true. Worthless.
All right, so there's two editorial changes. I'll just
whoa. You didn't say anything about editorial changes for this discussion.
One of them I'm interested from a coach's perspective.
It's not in my contract.
All right, well then I'll just mute you. All right, so what I'm looking at here is, one is, if right now if there's a foul called, the calling official goes table side. Okay, and as the official goes table side, he has the ability to commute with the coaches. Now they're trying to make it change where he goes opposite. I'm just curious as to what you guys think about that.
I didn't understand anything you just talked about. I need somebody to interpret that.
So if Adam calls a foul, he's going to report it, and he's going to end up standing right next to the bench.
Okay.
Now they're saying they want him to go away from the table on the opposite side.
But my calls are so bad and Brian's voice is so loud, I'm going to hear his displeasure all the way across the court anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, and that's my point, is I think it opens up negative lines of communication as opposed to Kevin being able to say, hey, Adam, what'd you see on that play?
Nothing as usual.
I agree, Kevin. And then the last one, who the coaches won't care about, but I know Mr. Brick will, is the elimination of the long switch, is to have the official who calls a player control foul just report it and go back to where they were.
Isn't that what we do now?
Well, that's what you do.
Okay. So we're done.
I don't know what the long switch is.
Yeah, well, you know what? Most of our officials don't either, so don't worry about it.
Don't have to worry about it.
But for our officials that are listening are hoping that one passes, because we don't do it right anyway, so it doesn't matter. So, but that's it. Those are the rules finalists. It is today is April 23rd, so the expectation is that these will be voted on in the end of April, early May, and that we'll get a an email out from NFHS to the schools and the officials associations with the rule changes. There's a couple in there we didn't go through that.
Good.
If you really want to go look at them, go look at them. But we don't care about uniform stuff really, at least for this setting. And but I would say I thought this was fun, guys. It was a joy to get back together with you guys, and good to see you guys, especially Kevin. Happy birthday, the big 5-0.
Big 5-0. Hey, I want to say that generally I think that officials are bad people.
True.
But
I'd agree with that.
But you guys are trying, so I appreciate the effort.
Well, one of us might be trying. I'm not sure about the other one.
I think we should also try to schedule this a little bit better around Adam's nap time next time. If he's having trouble sleeping at night, we can get on and do this again, and that'll probably cure it right there.
No, yeah, well, for most people, this will be, we forget the Zipa. I mean, this thing will cure insomnia in a heartbeat. We should probably get Zipa as a sponsor, because more people will sleep listening to this, therefore they'll snore more, so they need the Zipa. So you might want to have.
Kevin and I are doing a 2-hour broadcast just to talk about the shot clock
with Jerry Lynn.
Jerry Lynn, T-minus 10 minutes.
That is my cue.
We really appreciate it, and the next time we'll have to do this at a watering hole if
yes.
if we're allowed to.
Guys, it was a pleasure.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Nice.
Take care.
All right.